violence prevention and potential legislation at the state level. Please help me in welcoming them.
It's great to... Is it on?
Yes.
It's great to see this many people here on this very important topic, and to our local representatives, Congresswoman Brownlee and Senator Stern. Thank you for the moving words. Thank you to all the young people that are here. You really are inspiring us. And of course, Susan and Mark Orphanis, who are so incredibly brave and courageous. Thank you for your work, Susan. So as the Congresswoman mentioned, there's, it is an uphill battle at the federal level to try to pass meaningful legislation. Even though when you look at the general population, I don't believe that this is a partisan issue. I think that people are ready for common sense reforms. California has more regulations than any other state. At last measure, 109 regulations. And as the Congresswoman mentioned, there is a correlation. At the rate of gun violence in California is in the bottom 10. So while we are struggling with issues like how do we pass laws at the federal level and how do we deal with states that have much weaker regulations, and going forward, how are we going to deal with the Supreme Court that is really ready to go after local regulation. California continues to move forward. And so after the tragedy that we went through, every funeral, we were with all our local elected officials, and I had some very long discussions with law enforcement about specific areas that we could look at to try to make a difference here in California. And discussions with the sheriff and with the line officers and with Joel Price about what are potential holes in California's regulations, and looking at ways of addressing those. And so I don't know if you want to give a few introductory words here?
I do. Well, good afternoon, and I say it's a pleasure to be here, but it's really quite incomprehensible to me that we're here, especially in a forum led by our youth, talking about gun violence in our own community. Almost 33 years, or a little over 33 years of law enforcement, I've never seen such a vicious trend of violence perpetuated across our country, and it's shocking to me, and it's still surreal that it's hit our own neighborhoods here. I'm not here to express an opinion one way or another on gun possession or ownership, but I am here to tell you that we need more tools to keep guns out of the hands of those that shouldn't have them, those that have criminal intentions, those that have mental instabilities and so forth. And I will do whatever I can to work with our legislators, both locally and across the country, to make our community safer, to give our officers more tools to make that happen in our community.
So we've had a lot of beautiful discussion and heartfelt discussion. I'm going to be going a little bit into the two policy areas that we really want to make a difference in. So just to explain, before I talk about the three bills that I have and that Henry is going to help get through the Senate, just want to explain about the two areas that we're going to be looking at. A number of years ago, and this was after the Santa Barbara shootings. I don't know if Bob Weiss is here. Is he here today? Well, we lost a beautiful young woman from Westlake High School, and her father did a lot of work in trying to get this gun violence restraining order passed. And this went into effect in 2016, so it's just been in effect for a very short period of time. And So basically, it is a process where immediate family or law enforcement can request a judicial order to prevent somebody, to ban somebody temporarily from possessing a firearm or ammunition. And they would be able to remove the firearms for up to 21 days, and then the GVROs can be extended. At the federal level, it is considered one of the 6 really high impact laws that can make a difference. At the federal level, it's also called the Extreme Risk Protective Order. So this is something that we were really looking into initially when this happened. How could we make sure that family members here are aware of the ability to get through the courts a gun violence restraining order, and then also to make sure that there was no issue with law enforcement being able to use this. And I don't know if you want to add a little bit more about kind of that general.
Sure, the gun violence restraining orders are fairly new. They were introduced in 2016, and they fill a gap for our frontline officers when we encounter people in mental health crises. And they're, in their current form, they're difficult to use. There's a lot of unfamiliarity, particularly on the part of the public, with the fact that they, family members or relatives, neighbors, so forth, can actually seek these out. They're difficult enough for our officers who are dealing with paperwork and bureaucracy and those types of things on a daily basis to complete. And so, as the Assemblywoman will talk about in a few minutes, there are some fixes, legislative fixes that she's proposing that I support that will help make this a smoother process, increase awareness, and that sort of thing.
The other area that we're going to be looking at and have a bill on is the automated prohibited possessor system. And California is one of the few states that has a list that is maintained by the Attorney General. And that list includes convicted felons, individuals with mental illness, those addicted to narcotics, and other people that have been convicted of violent misdemeanors, including domestic violence. So the Attorney General has a very long list and is attempting to go to the homes of these people that are not allowed to have weapons but still do, and remove the weapons from them. Unfortunately, the list is extremely long. There's been some problems with maintaining that database, and the weapons are removed by the Attorney General, as opposed to, they're not often partnering with local law enforcement. But if you can, when we're talking about gun violence, and you already have people that are identified as not being able to possess guns, I think one of the best things that we can do is make sure that we quickly remove the arms from these people that are already not allowed to have them. So I don't know if you would like to.
This is a gap that we saw in the legislation when it first was presented to us and enacted into law.
I'll tell you later.
A tool that would allow us to immediately collect the firearms that are in the possession of that person that a restraining order had been granted against. And so, in my view, this fills a gap that should have been corrected.
Two different things.
Okay. And the unfortunate thing with this list right now in California, there are 10,000 people on the list that still are in possession of guns. And when you look, though, at what Ventura County has done, they have been able to, you have removed a large number of guns from people in Ventura County. I'm not even sure how long the list is, but they've been very proactive about making sure that guns are removed from people that, and again, these are people with mental health issues or that have had misdemeanors like domestic violence. So I'm just going to talk about the 3 bills. The first bill is AB 339, and that is 339 is going to require that every single department in California, whether it's a police or sheriff's department, develop policy on using gun violence restraining orders. So they develop their own policy and they make sure to educate their officers about the gun violence restraining orders. And with that, hopefully, comes an awareness from the public that you are part of the solution too. That if you have a family member or you have a neighbor that you think is problematic, that you are able to get a restraining order that allows at least temporarily the weapon to be removed from the person where family members have expressed concern. And when you look at a large number of the incidents that have happened across the country, there were family members, there were police officers that had concerns, but they did not have a mechanism to remove them. So we want to start with departments developing their own policy.
And the Sheriff's Office had a policy that we instituted as soon as the gun violence restraining order statute was enacted. But as we both mentioned earlier, it's a difficult mechanism to use for our frontline officers, and so these fixes that the Assemblywoman is proposing will really help us all out in our communities.
The second bill is AB 12, named after the 12 victims of the borderline murders. And that's basically putting in other fixes for GVROs. They have not been used in the last couple of years because there have been a lot of sort of difficulties. And what we have been doing is working with law enforcement to look at what could we do to make sure that they are used more often. So right now, if you have a GVRO, and a police officer goes to the door of somebody that has a weapon that isn't supposed to, they first have to be refused, then they have to go back to court and get a search warrant, and then they can come back and get them. We think that's completely unacceptable. You are warning somebody ahead of time that you're going to be removing their gun. So we are going to, what we're asking is that you are able to simultaneously obtain a search warrant and a GVRO. That's the first part of the The second part is that we are extending from 1 to 5 years the ability to extend a GVRO, because right now the courts are completely overburdened with this constant request of an extension of GVROs. And finally, this clarifies that an individual served with an emergency GVRO, which is by a police officer, has to immediately surrender all their firearms and ammunition to the officer.
Just to comment on that, one of the issues we struggled with was the fact that we had a person in crisis. We were able to convince a judge through things we'd observed and learned from others that person needed to be separated from firearms. Yet we give them 24 hours to dispose of them or hide them or do whatever it is they may do with them or commit an act of violence. So we struggle with that greatly. So I would appreciate that this gap's going to be closed.
And then finally, we are going to have a local grant program. As I mentioned before, for the prohibited possessor list, right now the Attorney General's office is removing the guns. So what they're basically doing is flying over to a county, that they're not familiar with. They might have to sit outside the home for a week, and often they are not successful in being able to locate the guns. So what we're going to do is a pilot program where we've picked 3 counties, and right now Ventura has agreed. We have 2 others that are looking at it, where we give grants to local law enforcement to go into the homes and start to work at removing the backlog of people that are on the prohibited possessor list. And you can comment a little bit more on that, but basically I think common sense would dictate if you have a really great department like we do here with the Sheriff's Department. They know who the dangerous people are in their vicinity, and we think that they would be much more able to remove the guns safely in a very expeditious manner.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I prefer not to have state agents coming into our county to conduct local business. We know our neighborhoods and our communities. We have the resources locally. We just think we need the funding and staff to do it.
So those are the 3 bills that we're introducing. We will have more information outside, and as I've said, we want as much community input. We'd love to have letters from you up to our legislators, And just know that we're really trying to fix holes in what's going on in California. But as Californians, we are way ahead of what the rest of the country is doing. And I do really want to thank the sheriff for his willingness to work with us. You know, some of these issues are very sticky, but we cannot make good policy without the input of public safety. We need to give them the tools that they need to keep our community safe. So thank you.